The B1 Ter was the most advanced vehicle of the B1 series to have reached the prototype stage by 1940. A heavier version of the B1 Bis, with thicker armour and a redesigned gun mount, it was scheduled to eventually replace it on the production lines, though the fall of France would prevent this from happening. It had, however, a fairly complicated and extensive development. Hello, and welcome to another Tank Encyclopedia voiced article. I'm your host Mark, and today I will be covering the B1 Ter, more precisely its first prototype, with the later three pre-production vehicles being the subject of the next video. If you like our videos and want to support us, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be used to improve future Tank Encyclopedia content. Any help would be greatly appreciated. A heavier B1. In the early 1920s, France launched a program for the development of a Char de Bataille, or battle tank. This tank would learn from the lessons of the First World War and provide a powerful machine able to break through enemy defensive lines, while being more reasonable and affordable than the gigantic FCM-2C. This would be the start of an extremely long development process, of which the first result to reach production, the B1, would only enter production in 1935, with the first production tank only delivered in December of that year. After just a battalion's worth of B1s were manufactured, 32 production vehicles, plus 2 of the 3 prototypes being converted to production standard, production switched to a more advanced model, the B1 Bis. In comparison to the B1, the Bis featured thicker armour, with 60mm of protection overall, as well as a more powerful 47mm anti-tank gun, the SA-35. However, this up-armouring of the B1 Bis would not have been sufficient in the long term. French tank designers generally compared the armour protection of their armoured vehicles with the penetration capacities of their own anti-tank gun. The 1930s had seen the adoption of some very powerful 47mm anti-tank guns, which could have reasonably penetrated the B1 Bis. Such guns were the Model 1934 APX fortification anti-tank gun, and the future SA-37 field anti-tank gun. Up-armouring the B1 Bis to face these threats more effectively was a necessity, in order to keep its assaulting capacities intact, and this could also serve as an occasion to solve some of the problems of the tank, such as its lack of hull gun lateral traverse. There had, in the past, already been some projects for heavier variants of the Char B. There had been a B2 project dating from the early 1930s, which would have been a 35-ton vehicle, but have retained an armour protection of merely 40mm. Though seemingly ongoing at the time, this project would not have had much in common with the B1 Bis, and would have been mostly a different vehicle, even if up-armoured. Instead of introducing a whole new tank, producing an improved model of the already improved B1 Bis was seen as the preferable alternative. However, there was still some skepticism surrounding the up-armouring of the B1 Bis. The tank was already an incredibly complex machine, and its production had some major complications due to the large number of manufacturers involved. Nonetheless, in April of 1935, the Council agreed to launch the study of an improved variant of the B1, which would feature 75mm of armour protection. Studies on the B2 continued at that time, but it quickly appeared this would not be going anywhere. By December of 1935, the Council cancelled all work on the B2. The project of the B1 Ter was centred around the design bureau of ARL, Arsenal de Roy, under the lead engineer, Lavirotte. He appears to have started work on a parallel version of the B1 Bis as early as 1935, notably wanting to try and reduce the tank's dependency to the advanced but complex and expensive Nader steering system, which was used to precisely aim the 75mm hull gun. Prototype, mock-up. A prototype of the B1 Ter was manufactured in 1937, in order to test the variety of technical solutions considered for the improved model of the B1 Bis. However, due to a lack of budget, this would not be an entirely new vehicle. Instead, The hull of B1 number 101, the first B1 prototype that had been manufactured by Renault all the way back in 1929, was used. The difference between a now more than half a decade old prototype and the features of a contemporary B1 series tank were tremendous. As such, a huge quantity of new components were added to the vehicle. In general, what remained of the original prototype was little more than the body, and a few of the basic elements of the number 101, such as the drive sprockets, with the vast majority of other components being newly built and added to the vehicle. Nonetheless, the use of an older hull still made deep structural changes a struggle, and this prototype would be massively different from a production B1 TER. As such, it would be best described as somewhere between a true prototype and a mock-up proof of concept. The hull of B1 number 101 underwent a large number of changes to create the B1 TER prototype. First, the 40mm plates were up-armoured to 60mm, identical to the B1 Bis, but not at the 75mm level desired for the TER. The vehicle also received weight to raise its mass to 33 tons. B1 number 101 appears to have weighed around 25.5 tons originally. This hull received the 307 horsepower engine of the B1 Bis, as well as the new, smaller gearbox. The vehicle received the wider tracks of the B1 Bis also. Most significantly, the hull's sides received a new armoured superstructure. The specified 75mm of armour to be found on the B1 TER applied not only to the front, but to the sides as well. ARL's engineers decided to study a solution in order to use plates slightly thinner than those specified at 75mm to provide equivalent protection. This would be performed by using 70mm plates folded at the centre, which would give them an angle of 25 degrees. This folded side armour is the easiest element allowing the differentiation of the B1 TER in comparison to another vehicle of the B1 series. It ought to be noted that the first prototype only had 40mm thick versions of these plates. The adoption of this peculiar side armour required some significant changes. The side grills of the vehicle's radiator were brought to the top of the hull. A new side door also had to be designed. Compared to the original laterally opening door, the B1 TER instead went with a vertically opening drawbridge type door on the vehicle's right. The tunnel-type mudguards on top of the B1 TER's hull also benefited from 40mm of armoured protection. A number of changes were applied to the vehicle's hull constructions in order, once again, to improve production. Most significantly, it appears ARL's engineers opted to reduce the bolting method, which was widely used on the hull of the B1 Bis, to a minimum, and instead switched to a welded construction as much as possible. The floor of the vehicle was 20mm thick, and now entirely welded, in order to reduce the threat of mines. Bolts were used to link it to the drivetrain. This switch to welded construction was generally viewed as positive, as it would improve the hull's rigidity, protection from mines, and would eventually be quicker and cheaper than the mass use of bolting. One of the more complex features found on the B1 TER prototype was the new gun mount. As said previously, Lavirotte and ARL's engineers had been studying a way to make the B1 Bis less reliant on its NADA steering system for a while, and the most obvious solution was to give some form of lateral traverse to the hull gun. This was performed by adding two lateral trunnions, allowing for the lateral traverse of the gun in addition to the already existing vertical ones. The resulting traverse would be of 10 degrees in theory, but only 9 degrees in practice. These were 5 degrees to the right, but only 4 to the left, as the dimensions of the hull's crew compartment did not allow the gun to traverse the last degree. Trials. The B1 number 101 base prototype entered trials following its completion in 1937. In the following months, a variety of different trials would be performed, though these would generally not be satisfactory. The vehicle's first road journey from ARL's facilities in Roye to the French Army's testing facilities in Satory resulted in issues with the cooling system, which would forcibly stop the vehicle. At Satory, the vehicle was presented to the at the time War Minister Edouard Deladier, Although it appears this first presentation may have been when orders for the pre-production B1 Ter prototypes were secured, the B1 Ter prototype would continue going through a variety of trials in the following months, which would generally not be glorious for the new heavy tank. In December 1937, a 200-kilometre-long trip from Roye to Bourges was planned, in 3 different steps. During the first step, the vehicle suffered oil and water leakages, as well as to the exhaust collection system. During the second step, starting up the vehicle proved difficult, while the exhaust collection had to be replaced. Finally, during the third step, the same exhaust collection system deteriorated again. The vehicle had suffered a number of breakdowns which required replacement of parts and emergency repairs during the trip, and had overall proved to be very unreliable. New trials in 1938 again showed issues with the air and oil cooling and exhaust collection system, and even issues starting up the engine. The Trial Commission's report on this B1 Ter prototype ended up very critical. The vehicle was found not only to be unable to solve most issues of the B1 and B1 Bis, but also to create several of its own. Notably, it had a lackluster cooling and braking system, problems with the exhaust collection, but also fragility of the new gearbox and drivetrain, which, despite being reinforced, struggled with the heavier weight. The Commission's report ended in a very dry comment. In these conditions, the Commission emits the following opinion. The B1 Ter tank offers little interest in its current state. Its production cannot currently be considered, even at a relatively long term. As we can see at this point, the future of the B1 Ter appeared compromised. Nonetheless, development would continue and eventually result in more mature vehicles. This, however, will be the subject of our next video. If you liked this first part, please leave a like and subscribe. You can find more information relating to this vehicle in the full article which is linked in the description. If you like what we are doing and want to help us continue working on these videos, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be allocated to improving our articles and videos for you. Until next time, keep us in your sights.